thence sprang the burning vision of desire. 1,000 shapes it wore, took numberless names, a need of multitude and uncertainty pricks it forever to pursue the one on countless roads across the vasts of time through circuits of unending difference. It burns all breasts with an ambiguous fire. A radiance gleaming on a murky stream, it flamed towards heaven, then sank, engulfed, towards hell. It climbed to drag down truth into the mire and used for muddy ends its brilliant force, a huge chameleon gold and blue and red turning to black and grey and lurid brown. Hungry it stared from a mottled bough of life to snap up insect joys, its favourite food, the dingy sustenance of a sumptuous frame nursing the splendid passion of its hues. A lifted head with mena-tinged flickering crests, it licked at knowledge with a smoky tongue. A whirlpool sucking in an empty air, it based on vacancy stupendous claims, in nothingness born to nothingness returned, yet all the time unwittingly it drove towards the hidden something that is all. Ardent to find, incapable to retain, a brilliant instability was its mark, to err its inborn trend, its native cue. At once to an unreflecting credence prone, it thought all true that flattered its own hopes, it cherished golden nothings born of wish, it snatched at the unreal for provender. In darkness it discovered luminous shapes, peering into a shadow, hung half-light it saw hued images scrawled on fancy's cave, or it swept in circles through conjecture's night and caught in imagination's camera bright scenes of promise held by transient flares, fixed in life's air the feet of hurrying dreams, kept prints of passing forms and hooded powers and flash images of half-seen verities. An eager spring to seize and to possess unguided by reason or the seeing soul was its first natural motion and its last. It squandered life's force to achieve the impossible, it scorned the straight road and ran on wandering curves and left what it had won for untried things. It saw unrealized aims as instant fate and chose the precipice for its leap to heaven. Adventure its system in the gamble of life, it took fortuitous gains as safe results. Error discouraged not its confident view ignorant of the deep law of being's ways and failure one chance made true warranted all the rest. Attempt, not victory, was the charm of life. An uncertain winner of uncertain stakes, instinct its dam and the life-mind its sire, it ran its race and came in first or last. Yet were its works nor small and vain nor null, it nursed a portion of infinity's strength and could create the high things its fancy willed, its passion caught what calm intelligence missed. Insight of impulse laid its leaping grasp on heaven's high thought had hidden in dazzling mist, caught glimmers that revealed a lurking sun, it probed the void and found a treasure there. A half-intuition purpled in its sense, it threw the lightning's fork and hit the unseen. It saw in the dark and vaguely blinked in the light, ignorance was its field, the unknown its prize. Of all these powers the greatest was the last. Arriving late from a far plane of thought into a packed irrational world of chance where all was grossly felt and blindly done, yet the haphazard seemed the inevitable, came reason, the squat godhead artisan, to her narrow house upon a ridge in time. Adept of clear contrivance and design, a pensive face and close and peering eyes, she took her firm and irremovable seat, the strongest, wisest of the troll-like three. Armed with her lens and measuring rod and probe, she looked upon an object universe and the multitudes that in it live and die in the body of space and the fleeing soul of time, and took the earth and stars into her hands to try what she could make of these strange things. In her strong purposeful laborious mind, and the geometric curves of her time plan, she multiplied her slow half-cuts at truth, impatient of enigma and the unknown, intolerant of the lawless and the unique, imposing reflection on the march of force, imposing clarity on the unfathomable, she strove to reduce to rules the mystic world. Nothing she knew but all things hoped to know. In dark inconscient realms once void of thought, missioned by a supreme intelligence to throw its ray upon the obscure vast, an imperfect light leading an erring mass by the power of sense and the idea and word, she ferrets out nature's process, substance, cause. All life to harmonize by thought's control, she with the huge imbroglio struggles still, ignorant of all but her own seeking mind to save the world from ignorance she came. A sovereign worker through the centuries observing and remoulding all that is, confident she took up her stupendous charge. There the low-bent and mighty figure sits bowed under the arc lamps of her factory home amid the clatter and ringing of her tools. A rigorous stare in her creative eyes coercing the plastic stuff of cosmic mind, she sets the hard inventions of her brain in a pattern of eternal fixity, indifferent to the cosmic dumb demand, unconscious of too close realities, of the unspoken thought, the voiceless heart. She leans to forge her credos and iron codes and metal structures to imprison life and mechanic models of all things that are. For the world seen she weaves a world conceived, she spins in stiff but unsubstantial lines her gossamer word webs of abstract thought, her segment systems of the infinite, her theodicies and cosmogonic charts and myths by which she explains the inexplicable. At will she spaces in thin air of mind like maps in the schoolhouse of intellect hung, forcing wide truth into a narrow scheme, her numberless warring strict philosophies, out of nature's body of phenomenon she carves with thought's keen edge in rigid lines, like rails for the world magician's power to run, her science is precise and absolute. On the huge bare walls of human nescience written round nature's deep dumb hieroglyphs she pens in clear demotic characters the vast encyclopedia of her thoughts, an algebra of her mathematic signs, her numbers and unerring formulas she builds to clinch her summary of things. On all sides runs as if in a cosmic mosque tracing the scriptural verses of her laws the daedal of her patterned arabesques, art of her wisdom, artifice of her law. This art, this artifice are her only stock. In her high works of pure intelligence, in her withdrawal from the senses trap, there comes no breaking of the walls of mind, there leaps no rending flash of absolute power, there dawns no light of heavenly certitude. A million faces wears her knowledge here and every face is turbaned with a doubt. All now is questioned, all reduced to naught. Once monumental in their massive craft her old great mythic writings disappear and into their place start strict ephemeral signs, this constant her thought is an endless march without a goal. There is no summit on which she can stand and see in a single glance the infinite's whole. An inconclusive play is reason's toil. Each strong idea can use her as its tool, accepting every brief she pleads her case. Open to every thought, she cannot know. The eternal advocate seated as judge armors in logic's invulnerable mail 1,000 combatants for truth's veiled throne and sets on a high horseback of argument to tilt forever with a wordy lance in a mock tournament where none can win. Assaying thought's values with her rigid tests balance she sits on wide and empty air, aloof and pure in her impartial poise. Absolute her judgments seem but none is sure, time cancels all her verdicts in appeal. Although like sunbeams to our glowworm mind her knowledge feigns to fall from a clear heaven, its rays are a lantern's lustres in the night, she throws a glittering robe on ignorance. But now is lost her ancient sovereign claim to rule mind's high realm in her absolute right, bind thought with logic's forged infallible chain or see truth nude in a bright abstract haze. A master and slave of stark phenomenon, she travels on the roads of erring sight or looks upon a set mechanical world constructed for her by her instruments. A bullock yoked in the cart of proven fact, she drags huge knowledge bales through matter's dust to reach utility's immense bazaar. Apprentice she has grown to her old drudge, an aided sense is her seeking's arbiter. As if she knew not facts are husks of truth, the husks she keeps, the kernel throws aside. An ancient wisdom fades into the past, the age's faith becomes an idle tale, God passes out of the awakened thought, an old discarded dream needed no more, only she seeks mechanic nature's keys. Interpreting stone laws inevitable she digs into matter's hard concealing soil, to unearth the processes of all things done. A loaded huge self-worked machine appears to her eyes eager and admiring stare, an intricate and meaningless enginery of ordered fateful and unfailing chance, ingenious and meticulous and minute, its brute unconscious accurate device unrolls an unerring march, maps a sure road, it plans without thinking, acts without a will, a million purposes serves with purpose none and builds a rational world without a mind. It has no mover, no maker, no idea, its vast self-action toils without a cause, a lifeless energy irresistibly driven, death's head on the body of necessity, engenders life and fathers consciousness, then wonders why all was and whence it came. Our thoughts are parts of the immense machine, our ponderings but a freak of matter's law. The mystic's law was a fancy or a blind, of soul or spirit we have now no need. Matter is the admirable reality, the patent unescapable miracle, the hard truth of things, simple, eternal, soul. A suicidal rash expenditure creating the world by a mystery of self-loss has poured its scattered works on empty space. Late shall the self-disintegrating force contract the immense expansion it has made, then ends this mighty and unmeaning toil, the void is left bare, vacant as before. Thus vindicated, crowned, the grand new thought explained the world and mastered all its laws, touched the dumb roots, woke veiled tremendous powers, it bound to service the unconscious jinns that sleep unused in matter's ignorant trance. All was precise, rigid, indubitable. But when on matter's rock of ages based a whole stood up firm and clear-cut and safe, all staggered back into a sea of doubt, this solid scheme melted in endless flux. She had met the formless power inventor of forms, suddenly she stumbled upon things unseen. A lightning from the undiscovered truth startled her eyes with its perplexing glare and dug a gulf between the real and known till all her knowledge seemed in ignorance. Once more the world was made a wonder-web, a magic's process in a magical space, an unintelligible miracle's depths whose source is lost in the ineffable. Once more we face the blank unknowable. In a crash of values, in a huge doom crack, in the sputter and scatter of her breaking work she lost her clear conserved constructed world. A quantum dance remained, a sprawl of chance in energy's stupendous tripping whirl, a ceaseless motion in the unbounded void invented forms without a thought or aim. Necessity and cause were shapeless ghosts, matter was an incident in being's flow, law but a clockwork habit of blind force. Ideals, ethics, systems had no base and soon collapsed or without sanction lived. All grew a chaos, a heathen clash and strife. Ideas warring and fierce leaped upon life, a hard compression held down anarchy and liberty was only a phantom's name. Creation and destruction waltzed unarmed on the bosom of a torn and quaking earth, all reeled into a world of Kali's dance. Thus tumbled, sinking, sprawling in the void, clutching for props, a soil on which to stand, she only saw a thin atomic vast, the rare point sparse substratum universe on which floats a solid world's phenomenal face. Alone a process of events was there and nature's plastic and protean change and, strong by death to slay or to create, the riven invisible atom's omnipotent force. One chance remained that here might be a power to liberate man from the old inadequate means and leave him sovereign of the earthly scene. For reason then might grasp the original force to drive her car upon the roads of time. All then might serve the need of the thinking race, an absolute state found orders absolute, to a standardized perfection cut all things, in society build a just exact machine. Then science and reason careless of the soul could iron out a tranquil uniform world, eonic seekings glut with outward truths and a single pattern thinking force on mind, inflicting matter's logic on spirit's dreams a reasonable animal make of man and a symmetrical fabric of his life. This would be nature's peak on an obscure globe, the grand result of the long ages' toil, so might it be if the spirit fell asleep, man then might rest content and live in peace. Master of nature who once her bondslave worked, the world's disorder hardening into law, if life's dire heart arose not in revolt, if God within could find no greater plan. But men envisaged is the cosmic soul, a touch can alter the fixed front of fate. A sudden turn can come, a road appear. A greater mind may see a greater truth, or we may find when all the rest has failed hid in ourselves the key of perfect change. Ascending from the soil where creep our days, earth's consciousness may marry with the sun, our mortal life ride on the spirit's wings, our finite thoughts commune with the infinite. In the bright kingdoms of the rising sun all is a birth into a power of light, all here deformed guards there its happy shape, here all is mixed and marred, there pure and whole, yet each is a passing step, a moment's phase. Awake to a greater truth beyond her acts, the mediatrix sat and saw her works and felt the marvel in them and the force but knew the power behind the face of time, she did the task, obeyed the knowledge given, her deep heart yearned towards great ideal things, and from the light looked out to wider light. A brilliant hedge drawn round her narrowed her power, faithful to her limited sphere she toiled, but knew its highest, widest seeing was a half-search, its mightiest acts a passage or a stage. For not by reason was creation made, and not by reason can the truth dimmed by the imperfection of its means. The little mind is tied to little things, its sense is but the spirit's outward touch, half-waked in a world of dark inconscience, it feels out for its beings and its forms like one left fumbling in the ignorant night. In this small mold of infant mind and sense desire is a child heart's cry crying for bliss, our reason only a toy's artificer, a rule-maker in a strange stumbling game. But she her dwarf aids knew, whose confident sight a bounded prospect took for the far goal. The world she has made is an interim report of a traveller towards the half-found truth in things moving twixt nescience and nescience. For nothing is known while aught remains concealed, the truth is known only when all is seen. Attracted by the all that is the one, she yearns towards a higher light than hers, hid by her cults and creeds she has glimpsed God's face, she knows she has but found a form, a robe, but ever she hopes to see him in her heart and feel the body of his reality. As yet a mask is there and not a brow, although sometimes two hidden eyes appear, reason cannot tear off that glimmering mask, her efforts only make it glimmer more. In packets she ties up the indivisible, finding her hands too small to hold vast truth she breaks up knowledge into alien parts or peers through cloud rack for a vanished sun, she sees, not understanding what she has seen, through the locked visages of finite things the myriad aspects of infinity. Our error weds new knowledge on its way, its darkness is a blackened knot of light, thought dances hand in hand with nescience on the grey road that winds towards the sun even while her fingers fumble at the knots which bind them to their strange companionship, into the moments of their married strife sometimes break flashes of the enlightening fire. Even now great thoughts are here that walk alone, armed they have come with the infallible word in an investiture of intuitive light that is a sanction from the eyes of God, announcers of a distant truth they flame arriving from the rim of eternity. A fire shall come out of the infinitudes, a greater gnosis shall regard the world crossing out of some far omniscience on lustrous seas from the still wrapped alone to illumine the deep heart of self and things. A timeless knowledge it shall bring to mind, its aim to life, to ignorance its close dot above in a high breathless stratosphere, overshadowing the dwarfish trinity, lived, aspirants to a limitless beyond, captives of space, walled by the limiting heavens, in the unceasing circuit of the hours yearning for the straight paths of eternity, and from their high station look down on this world two sun-gazed diamonds witnessing all that is. A power to uplift the laggard world, imperious rode a huge high-winged life-thought unwont to tread the firm unchanging soil, accustomed to a blue infinity, it planed in sunlit sky and starlit air. It saw afar the unreached immortal's home and heard afar the voices of the gods. Iconoclast and shatter of time's forts, overleaping limit and exceeding norm, it lit the thoughts that glow through the centuries and moved to acts of superhuman force. As far as its self-winged airplanes could fly, visiting the future in great brilliant raids it reconnoitered vistas of dream fate. Apt to conceive, unable to attain, it drew its concept maps and vision plans too large for the architecture of mortal space. Beyond in wideness where no footing is, an imagist of bodiless ideas, impassive to the cry of life and sense, a pure thought mind surveyed the cosmic act. Archangel of a white transcending realm, it saw the world from solitary heights luminous in a remote and empty air. Canto 11. The kingdoms and godheads of the greater mind. There ceased the limits of the laboring power. But being and creation cease not there. For thought transcends the circles of mortal mind, it is greater than its earthly instrument, the Godhead crammed into mind's narrow space escapes on every side into some vast that is a passage to infinity. It moves eternal in the spirit's field, a runner towards the far spiritual light, a child and servant of the spirit's force. But mind too falls back from a nameless peak. His being stretched beyond the sight of thought. For the spirit is eternal and unmade, and not by thinking was its greatness born, and not by thinking can its knowledge come. It knows itself and in itself it lives, it moves where no thought is nor any form. Its feet are steadied upon finite things, its wings can dare to cross the infinite. Arriving into his ken a wonder space of great and marvelous meetings called his steps, where thought leaned on a vision beyond thought and shaped a world from the unthinkable. On peaks imagination cannot tread, in the horizons of a tireless sight, under a blue veil of eternity the splendors of ideal mind were seen outstretched across the boundaries of things known. Origin of the little that we are, instinct with the endless more that we must be, a prop of all that human strength enacts, creator of hopes by earth unrealized, it spreads beyond the expanding universe, it wings beyond the boundaries of dream, it overtops the ceiling of life's soar. Awake in a luminous sphere unbound by thought, exposed to omniscient immensities, it casts on our world its great crowned influences, its speed that outstrips the ambling of the hours, its force that strides invincibly through time, its mights that bridge the gulf twixt man and God, its lights that combat ignorance and death. In its vast ambit of ideal space where beauty and mightiness walk hand in hand, the Spirit's truths take form as living gods and each can build a world in its own right. In an air which doubt and error cannot mark with the stigmata of their deformity, in communion with the musing privacy of a truth that sees in an unerring light where the sight falters not nor wanders thought, exempt from our world's exorbitant tax of tears, dreaming its luminous creations gaze on the ideas that people eternity. In a sunblaze of joy and absolute power above the masters of the ideal throne in sessions of secure felicity, in regions of illumined certitude. Far are those realms from our labor and yearning and call, perfection's reign and hallowed sanctuary close to the uncertain thoughts of human mind, remote from the turbid tread of mortal life. But since our secret selves are next of kin, a breath of unattained diviniture thought comes down from the ideal worlds and moves us to new model even hear some image of their greatness and appeal and wonder beyond the ken of mortal hope. Amid the heavy sameness of the days and contradicted by the human law, a faith in things that are not and must be lives comrade of this world's delight and pain, the child of the secret soul's forbidden desire born of its amour with eternity. Our spirits break free from their environment, the future brings its face of miracle near, its Godhead looks at us with present eyes, acts deemed impossible grow natural, we feel the hero's immortality, the courage and the strength death cannot touch awake in limbs that are mortal, hearts that fail, we move by the rapid impulse of a will that scorns the tardy trudge of mortal time. These promptings come not from an alien sphere, ourselves are citizens of that mother state, adventurers, we have colonized matter's night. But now our rights are barred, our passports void, we live exiled from our heavenlier home. An errant ray from the immortal mind accepted the earth's blindness and became our human thought, servant of ignorance. An exile, laborer on this unsure globe captured and driven in life's nescient grasp, hampered by obscure cell and treacherous nerve, it dreams of happier states and nobler powers, the natural privilege of unfallen gods, recalling still its old lost sovereignty. Amidst earth's mist and fog and mud and stone it still remembers its exalted sphere and the high city of its splendid birth. A memory steals in from lost heavens of truth, a wide release comes near, a glory calls, a might looks out, an estranged felicity. In glamorous passages of half-veiled light wandering, a brilliant shadow of itself, this quick uncertain leader of blind gods, this tender of small lamps, this minister serf hired by a mind and body for earth use forgets its work mid crude realities, it recovers its renounced imperial right, it wears once more a purple robe of thought and knows itself the ideal seer and king, communicant and prophet of the unborn, heir to delight and immortality. All things are real that here are only dreams, in our unknown depths sleeps their reserve of truth, on our unreached heights they reign and come to us in thought and muse trailing their robes of light. But our dwarf will and cold pragmatic sense admit not the celestial visitants, awaiting us on the ideal's peaks or guarded in our secret self unseen yet flashed sometimes across the awakened soul, hide from our lives their greatness, beauty, power. Our present feels sometimes their regal touch, our future strives towards their luminous thrones, out of spiritual secrecy they gaze, immortal footfalls in mind's corridors sound, our souls can climb into the shining plains, the breadths from which they came can be our home. His privilege regained of shadowless sight, the thinker entered the immortal's air and drank again his pure and mighty source. Immutable in rhythmic calm and joy he saw, sovereignly free in limitless light, where knowledge is the leader of the act and matter is of thinking substance made, feeling, a heaven bird poised on dreaming wings, answers truth's call as to a parent's voice, form luminous leaps from the all-shaping beam, and will is a conscious chariot of the gods, and life, a splendor stream of musing force, carries the voices of the mystic suns. A happiness it brings of whispered truth. There runs in its flow honeying the bosom of space a laughter from the immortal heart of bliss, and the unfathomed joy of timelessness, the sound of wisdom's murmur in the unknown and the breath of an unseen infinity. In gleaming clarities of amethyst ere the chainless and omnipotent spirit of mind brooded on the blue lotus of the idea. A gold supernal sun of timeless truth poured down the mystery of the eternal ray through a silence quivering with the word of light on an endless ocean of discovery. Far off he saw the joining hemispheres. On meditation's mounting edge of trance great stairs of thought climbed up to unborn heights where time's last ridges touch eternity's skies and nature speaks to the spirit's absolute. A triple realm of ordered thought came first, a small beginning of immense ascent. Above were bright ethereal skies of mind, a packed and endless soar as if sky-pressed sky buttressed against the void on bastioned light. The highest strove to neighbor eternity, the largest widened into the infinite. But though immortal, mighty and divine, the first realms were close and kin to human mind, their deities shape our greater thinking's roads, a fragment of their puissance can be ours. These breadths were not too broad for our souls to range, these heights were not too high for human hope. A triple flight led to this triple world. Although abrupt for common strengths to tread, its upward slope looks down on our earth poise. On a slant not too precipitously steep one could turn back traveling deep descending lines to commune with the mortal's universe. The mighty wardens of the ascending stair who intercede with the all-creating word, there waited for the pilgrim heaven-bound soul. Holding the thousand keys of the beyond they proffered their knowledge to the climbing mind and filled the life with thought's immensities. The prophet hierophants of the occult law, the flame-bright hierarchs of the divine truth, interpreters between man's mind and God's, they bring the immortal fire to mortal men. Iridescent, bodying the invisible, the guardians of the eternal's bright degrees fronted the sun in radiant phalanxes. Afar they seemed a symbol imagery, illumined originals of the shadowy script in which our sight transcribes the ideal ray, or icons figuring a mystic truth, but, nearer, gods and living presences. A march of friezes marked the lowest steps, fantastically ornate and richly small, they had room for the whole meaning of a world, symbols minute of its perfection's joy, but wide the terrains where those levels serve. In front of the ascending epiphany world time's enjoyers, favorites of world bliss, the masters of things actual, lords of the hours, playmates of youthful nature and child God, creators of matter by hid stress of mind whose subtle thoughts support unconscious life and guide the fantasy of brute events, stood there, a race of young keen-visioned gods, king-children born on wisdom's early plane, taught in her school world-making's mystic play. Archmasons of the eternal thaumaturge, moulders and measurers of fragmented space, they have made their plan of the concealed and known a dwelling house for the invisible king. Obeying the eternal's deep command they have built in the material front of things this wide world, kindergarten of young souls where the infant spirit learns through mind and sense to read the letters of the cosmic script and study the body of the cosmic self and search for the secret meaning of the whole. To all that spirit conceives they give a mold, persuading nature into visible moods they lend a finite shape to infinite things. Each power that leaps from the unmanifest leaving the largeness of the eternal's peace they seized and held by their precision eye and made a figurant in the cosmic dance. Its free caprice they bound by rhythmic laws and compelled to accept its posture and its line in the wizardry of an ordered universe. The all-containing was contained in form, oneness was carved into units measurable, the limitless built into a cosmic sum, unending space was beaten into a curve, indivisible time into small minutes cut, the infinitesimal mass to keep secure the mystery of the formless cast into form. Invincibly their craft devised for use the magic of sequent number and sign spell. Design's miraculous potency was court laden with beauty and significance, and by the determining mandate of their gaze figure and quality equating joined in an inextricable identity. On each event they stamped its curves of law and its trust and charge of burdened circumstance, a free and divine incident no more at each moment willed or adventure of the soul. It lengthened a fate-bound mysterious chain, a line foreseen of an immutable plan, one step more in necessity's long march. A term was set for every eager power restraining its will to monopolize the world, a groove of bronze prescribed for force and act and shown to each moment its appointed place forewilled inalterably in the spiral huge time loop fugitive from eternity. Inevitable their thoughts like links of fate imposed on the leap and lightning race of mind and on the frail fortuitous flux of life and on the liberty of atomic things immutable cause and adamant consequence. Idea gave up the plastic infinity to which it was born and now traced out instead small separate steps of chainwork in a plot, immortal once, now tied to birth and end, torn from its immediacy of errorless sight. Knowledge was rebuilt from cells of inference into a fixed body flask and perishable, thus bound it grew, but could not last and broken to a new thinking's body left its place. A cage for the infinite's great-eyed seraphim thoughts was closed with a crisscross of world laws for bars and hedged into a curt horizon's arc the irised vision of the ineffable. A timeless spirit was made the slave of the hours. The unbound was cast into a prison of birth to make a world that mind could grasp and rule. On an earth which looked towards 1,000 suns, that the created might grow nature's lord and matter's depths be illumined with a soul they tied to date and norm and finite scope the million mysteried movement of the one. Above stood ranked a subtle archangel race with larger lids and looks that searched the unseen. A light of liberating knowledge shone across the gulfs of silence in their eyes. They lived in the mind and knew truth from within. A sight withdrawn in the concentrated heart could pierce behind the screen of time's results and the rigid cast and shape of visible things. All that escaped conception's narrow noose vision descried and gripped, their seeing thoughts filled in the blanks left by the seeking sense. High architects of possibility and engineers of the impossible, mathematicians of the infinitudes and theoricians of unknowable truths, they formulate enigmas postulates and join the unknown to the apparent worlds. Acolytes they wait upon the timeless power, the cycle of her works investigate, passing her fence of wordless privacy their mind could penetrate her occult mind and draw the diagram off copies they made of all her guarded plans, for every turn of her mysterious course assigned a reason and unchanging rule. The unseen grew visible to student eyes, explained was the immense inconscient scheme, audacious lines were traced upon the void, the infinite was reduced to square and cube. Arranging symbol and significance, tracing the curve of a transcendent power, they framed the Kabbalah of the cosmic law, the balancing line discovered of life's technique and structured her magic and her mystery. Imposing schemes of knowledge on the vast they clamped to syllogisms of finite thought the free logic of an infinite consciousness, grammared the hidden rhythms of nature's dance, critiqued the plot of the drama of the worlds, made figure and number a key to all that is. The psychoanalysis of cosmic self was traced, its secrets hunted down, and read the unknown pathology of the unique. Assessed was the system of the probable, the hazard of fleeing possibilities, to account for the actual's unaccountable sum, necessity's logarithmic tables drawn, cast into a scheme the triple act of the one. Unveiled, the abrupt invisible multitude of forces whirling from the hands of chance seemed to obey some vast imperative. Their tangled motives worked out unity. A wisdom read their mind to themselves unknown, their anarchy rammed into a formula and from their giant randomness of force, following the habit oath out of the chaos of the invisible's moods derived the calculus of destiny. In its bright pride of universal law mind's knowledge overtopped the omniscient's power, the eternal's winging eagle puissances surprised in their untracked empyrean stooped from their gyves to obey the beck of thought. Each mysteried god forced to revealing form, assigned his settled moves in nature's game, zigzagged at the gesture of a chess player will across the checkerboard of cosmic fate. In the wide sequence of necessity's steps predicted, every act and thought of God, its values weighed by the accountant mind, checked in his mathematized omnipotence, lost its divine aspect of miracle and was a figure in a cosmic sum. The mighty mother's whims and lightning moods arisen from her all-wise unruled delight in the freedom of her sweet and passionate breast, robbed of their wonder were chained to a cause and aim. An idol of bronze replaced her mystic shape that captures the movements of the cosmic vasts. In the sketch precise of an ideal face forgotten was her eyelashes dreamprint carrying on their curve infinity's dreams, lost the alluring marvel of her eyes, the surging wave throbs of her vast sea heart they. Bound to a theorem of ordered beats, her deep designs which from herself she had veiled bowed self, revealed in their confessional. For the birth and death of the worlds they fixed a date, the diameter of infinity was drawn, measured the distant arc of the unseen heights and visualized the plumbless viewless depths, till all seemed known that in all time all was coerced by number, name and form, nothing was left untold, incalculable. Yet was their wisdom circled with a naught, truths they could find and hold but not the one truth, the highest was to them unknowable. By knowing too much they missed the whole to be known. The fathomless heart of the world was left unguessed and the transcendent kept its secrecy. In a sublimer and more daring soar to the wide summit of the triple stairs bare steps climbed up like flaming rocks of gold burning their way to a pure absolute sky. August and few the sovereign kings of thought have made of space their wide all-seeing gaze surveying the enormous work of time, a breadth of all-containing consciousness supported being in a still embrace. Intercessors with a luminous unseen, they captain in the long passage to the world the imperatives of the Creator's self obeyed by unknowing earth, by conscious heaven, their thoughts are partners in its vast control. A great all-ruling consciousness is there and mind unwitting serves a higher power, it is a channel, not the source of all. The cosmos is no accident in time, there is a meaning in each play of chance, there is a freedom in each face of fate. A wisdom knows and guides the mysteried world, a truth gaze shapes its beings and events, a word self-born upon creation's heights, voice of the eternal in the temporal spheres, prophet of the seeings of the absolute, sows the idea's significance in form and from that seed the growths of time arise. On peaks beyond our ken the all-wisdom sits, a single and infallible look comes down, a silent touch from the supernal's air awakes to ignorant knowledge in its acts the secret power in the inconscient depths, compelling the blinded Godhead to emerge, determining necessity's nude dance as she passes through the circuit of the hours and vanishes from the chase of finite eyes down circling vistas of eonic time. The unseizable forces of the cosmic will bear in their bacchant limbs the fixity of an original foresight that is fate. Even nature's ignorance is truth's instrument. Our struggling ego cannot change her course, yet is it a conscious power that moves in us, a seed idea is parent of our acts and destiny the unrecognized child of will. Infallibly by truth's directing gaze all creatures hear their secret self disclose, forced to become what in themselves they hide. For he who is grows manifest in the years and the slow Godhead shut within the cell climbs from the plasm to immortality. But hidden, but denied to mortal grasp, mystic, ineffable is the Spirit's truth, unspoken, caught only by the Spirit's eye. When naked of ego and mind it hears the voice, it looks through light to ever greater light and sees eternity ensphering life. This greater truth is foreign to our thoughts, where a free wisdom works, they seek for a rule, or we only see a tripping game of chance or a labor in chains forced by bound nature's law, an absolutism of dumb unthinking power. Audacious in their sense of God-born strength these dared to grasp with their thought truths absolute, by an abstract purity of godless sight, by a percept nude, intolerant of forms, they brought to mind what mind could never reach and hoped to conquer truth's supernal base. A stripped imperative of conceptual phrase architectonic and inevitable translated the unthinkable into thought, a silver-winged fire of naked subtle sense, an ear of mind withdrawn from the outwards rhymes discovered the seed sounds of the eternal word, the rhythm and music heard that built the worlds, and seized in things the bodiless will to be. The illimitable they measured with numbers rods and traced the last formula of limited things, in transparent systems bodied termless truths, the timeless made accountable to time and valued the incommensurable supreme. To park and hedge the ungrasped infinitudes they erected absolute walls of thought and speech and made a vacuum to hold the one. In their sight they drove towards an empty peak, a mighty space of cold and sunlit air. To unify their task, excluding life which cannot bear the nakedness of the vast, they made a cipher of a multitude, in negation found the meaning of the all and in nothingness the absolute positive. A single law simplest the cosmic theme, compressing nature into a formula, their titan labor made all knowledge one, a mental algebra of the spirit's ways, an abstract of the living divinity. This was the play of the bright gods of thought. Attracting into time the timeless light, imprisoning eternity in the hours, this they have planned, to snare the feet of truth in an aureate net of concept and of phrase and keep her captive for the thinker's joy in his little world built of immortal dreams. There must she dwell mured in the human mind, an empress prisoner in her subject's house, adored and pure and still on his heart's throne, his splendid property cherished and apart in the wall of silence of his secret muse, immaculate in white virginity, the same forever and forever one, his worshipped changeless goddess through all time. Or else, a faithful consort of his mind assenting to his nature and his will, she sanctions and inspires his words and acts prolonging their resonance through the listening years, companion and recorder of his march crossing a brilliant tract of thought and life carved out of the eternity of time. A witness to his high triumphant star, her godhead servitor to a crowned idea, he shall dominate by her a prostrate world, a warrant for his deeds and his beliefs, she attests his right divine to lead and rule. Or as a lover clasps his one beloved, godhead of his life's worship and desire, icon of his heart's sole idolatry, she now is his and must live for him alone. She has invaded him with her sudden bliss, an exhaustless marvel in his happy grasp, an allurement, a court-ravishing miracle. Her now he claims after inescapable is her divine appeal, her immense possession an undying thrill, an intoxication and an ecstasy, the passion of her self-revealing moods, a heavenly glory and variety, makes ever new her body to his eyes, or else repeats the first enchantment's touch, the luminous rapture of her mystic breasts and beautiful vibrant limbs, a living field of throbbing new discovery without end. A new beginning flowers in word and laugh, a new charm brings back the old extreme delight, he is lost in her, she is his heaven here. Truth smiled upon the gracious golden game. Out of her hushed eternal spaces leaned the great and boundless goddess fain to yield the sunlit sweetness of her secrecies. Incarnating her beauty in his clasp she gave for a brief kiss her immortal lips and drew to her bosom one glorified mortal head, she made earth her home, for whom heaven was too small. In a human breast her occult presence lived, he carved from his own self his figure of her, she shaped her body to a mind's embrace. Into thought's narrow limits she has come, her greatness she has suffered to be pressed into the little cabin of the idea, the closed room of a lonely thinker's grasp. She has lowered her heights to the stature of our souls and dazzled our lids with her celestial gaze. Thus each is satisfied with his high gain and thinks himself beyond mortality blessed, a king of truth upon his separate throne. To her possessor in the field of time but thought nor word can seize eternal truth, the whole world lives in a lonely ray of her Sunday. In our thinking's close and narrow lamplit house the vanity of our shut mortal mind dreams that the chains of thought have made her ours, but only we play with our own brilliant bonds, tying her down, it is ourselves we tie. In our hypnosis by one luminous point we see not what small figure of her we hold, we feel not her inspiring boundlessness, we share not her immortal liberty. Thus is it even with the seer and sage, for still the human limits the divine. Out of our thoughts we must leap up to sight, breathe her divine illimitable air, her simple vast supremacy confess, dare to surrender to her absolute. Then the unmanifest reflects his form in the still mind as in a living glass, the timeless ray descends into our hearts and we are wrapped into eternity. For truth is wider, greater than her forms. 1,000 icons they have made of her and find her in the idols they adore, but she remains herself an infinite. Canto 12. The heavens of the ideal. Always the ideal beckoned from afar. Awakened by the touch of the unseen, deserting the boundary of things achieved, aspired the strong discoverer, tireless thought, revealing at each step a luminous world. It left known summits for the unknown peaks. Impassioned, it sought the lone unrealized truth. It longed for the light that knows not death and birth. Each stage of the soul's remote ascent was built into a constant heaven felt always here. At each pace of the journey marvelous a new degree of wonder and of bliss, a new rung formed in being's mighty stair, a great wide step trembling with jeweled fire as if a burning spirit quivered there upholding with his flame the immortal hope, as if a radiant God had given his soul that he might feel the tread of pilgrim feet mounting in haste to the Eternal's house. At either end of each effulgent stair the heavens of the ideal mind were seen in a blue lucency of dreaming space like strips of brilliant sky clinging to the moon. On one side glimmered hue on floating hue, a glory of sunrise breaking on the soul, in a tremulous rapture of the heart's insight and the spontaneous bliss that beauty gives, the lovely kingdoms of the deathless rose. Above the spirit cased in mortal sense are superconscious realms of heavenly peace, below, the inconscious sullen dim abyss, between, behind our life, the deathless rose. Across the covert air the spirit breathes, a body of the cosmic beauty and joy unseen, unguessed by the blind suffering world, climbing from nature's deep surrendered heart it blooms forever at the feet of God, fed by life's sacrificial mysteries. Here too its bud is born in human breasts, then by a touch, a presence or a voice the world is turned into a temple ground and all discloses the unknown beloved. In an outburst of heavenly joy and ease life yields to the divinity within and gives the rapture offering of its all, and the soul opens to felicity. A bliss is felt that never can wholly cease, a sudden mystery of secret grace flowers goldening our earth of red desire. All the high gods who hid their visages from the soiled passionate ritual of our hopes, reveal their names and their undying powers. A fiery stillness wakes the slumbering cells, a passion of the flesh becoming spirit, and marvelously is fulfilled at last the miracle for which our life was made. A flame in a white voiceless cupola is seen and faces of immortal light, the radiant limbs that know not birth and death, the breasts that suckle the firstborn of the sun, the wings that crowd thought's ardent silences, the eyes that look into spiritual space. Our hidden centers of celestial force open like flowers to a heavenly atmosphere, mind pauses thrilled with the supernal ray, and even this transient body then can feel and laughter of the heart's sweetness and delight freed from the rude and tragic hold of time, and beauty and the rhythmic feet of the hours. This in high realms touches immortal kind, what here is in the bud has blossomed there. There is the secrecy of the house of flame, the blaze of godlike thought and golden bliss, the rapt idealism of heavenly sense, there are the wonderful voices, the sun laugh, a gurgling eddy in rivers of God's joy, and the mysteried vineyards of the gold moon wine, all the fire and sweetness of which hardly here a brilliant shadow visits mortal life. Although are witnessed there the joys of time, pressed on the bosom the immortal's touch is felt, heard are the flutings of the infinite. Here upon earth are early awakenings, moments that tremble in an air divine, and groan upon the yearning of her soiled time's sun, flowers gaze at gold eternity, there are the imperishable beatitudes. A million lotuses swaying on one stem, world after colored and ecstatic world climbs towards some far unseen epiphany. On the other side of the eternal stairs the mighty kingdoms of the deathless flame aspired to reach the being's absolutes. Out of the sorrow and darkness of the world, out of the depths where life and thought are tombed, lonely mounts up to heaven the deathless flame. In a veiled nature's hallowed secrecies it burns forever on the altar mind, its priests the souls of dedicated gods, humanity its house of sacrifice. Once kindled, never can its flaming cease. A fire along the mystic paths of earth, it rises through the mortal's hemisphere, till borne by runners of the day and dusk it enters the occult eternal light and clambers whitening to the invisible throne. Its worlds are steps of an ascending force, a dream of giant contours, titan lines, homes of unfallen and illumined might, heavens of unchanging good pure and unborn, heights of the grandeur of truth's ageless ray, as in a symbol sky they start to view and call our souls into a vaster air. On their summits they bear up the sleepless flame, dreaming of a mysterious beyond, transcendent of the paths of fate and time, they point above themselves with index peaks through a pale sapphire ether of God, mind towards some gold infinite's apocalypse. A thunder rolling mid the hills of God, tireless, severe is their tremendous voice, exceeding us, to exceed ourselves they call and bid us rise incessantly above. Far from our eager reach those summits live, too lofty for our mortal strength and height, hardly in a dire ecstasy of toil climbed by the spirit's naked athlete will. Austere, intolerant they claim from us efforts too lasting for our mortal nerve our hearts cannot cleave to nor our flesh support, only the eternal strength in us can dare to attempt the immense adventure of that climb and the sacrifice of all we cherish here. Our human knowledge is a candle burnt on a dim altar to a sun-vast truth, man's virtue, a coarse-spun ill-fitting dress, apparel's wooden images of good, passionate and blinded, bleeding, stained with mirror his energy stumbles towards a deathless force. An imperfection dogs our highest strength, portions and pale reflections are our share. Happy the worlds that have not felt our fall, where will is one with truth and good with power, impoverished not by earth-mind's indigence, they keep God's natural breath of mightiness, his bare spontaneous swift intensities, there is his great transparent mirror, self, and there his sovereign autarky of bliss in which immortal natures have their part, heirs and co-sharers of divinity. He through the ideal's kingdoms moved at will, accepted their beauty and their greatness bore, partook of the glories of their wonder fields, but passed nor stayed beneath their splendor's rule. All there was an intense but partial light. In each a seraph-winged high-browed idea united all knowledge by one master thought, persuaded all action to one golden sense, all powers subjected to a single power and made a world where it could reign alone, an absolute ideal's perfect home. Insignia of their victory and their faith, they offered to the traveler at their gates a quenchless flame or an unfading flower, emblem of a high kingdom's privilege. A glorious shining angel of the way presented to the seeking of the soul the sweetness and the might of an idea, each deemed truth's intimate fount and summit force, the heart of the meaning of the universe, perfection's key, passport to paradise. Yet were there regions where these absolutes met and made a circle of bliss with married hands, light stood embraced by light, fire but none in the other would his body lose to find his soul in the world's single soul, a multiplied rapture of infinity. Onward he passed to a diviner sphere, there, joined in a common greatness, light and bliss, all high and beautiful and desirable powers forgetting their difference and their separate reign become a single multitudinous whole. Above the parting of the roads of time, above the silence and its thousandfold word, in the immutable and inviolate truth forever united and inseparable, the radiant children of eternity dwell on the wide spirit height where all are one.